people want to hear it. That's fine.
Yeah, exactly right. Where are you, by the way? Are you in Philadelphia?
Yes, I'm based in Philadelphia, which it's actually a really beautiful day, a beautiful spring day. We're in that like 2 weeks of nice weather before it gets like way too hot.
Yeah, well, this is that magic window when it's just perfect. And so actually, so let's start off by telling me a little bit about. I'm looking down because I have the music right in front of me. Telling me a little bit about how you chose to work with Jacqueline Goldfinger,
Yeah.
and how long does your relationship go back, and then what kind of collaboration you two did together.
Okay. Uh, I have known Jackie actually through the theater scene here in Philadelphia. So, fun fact, before I made up my mind to be a composer, I was an actor working in theater. That's actually how I got my start in composing, was writing music for a Shakespeare production, Midsummer Night's Dream in Harrisburg.
Oh, great.
Um, then I moved to Philadelphia and I was heavily involved in the theater scene here in Philadelphia, even while I was in music school studying to be a composer. And Jackie and I knew each other from that scene because Jackie is a very accomplished and lauded playwright in her own right. Um, And so we sort of knew each other through the scene. And for some years, actually, we would have these occasional coffee dates and lunches where we would sort of, chat through and say, gosh, wouldn't it be nice to have an opportunity to collaborate? Maybe that will come along one day. And our first sort of big opportunity to do that was with an opera that I wrote for Oberlin Conservatory, which was premiered last year in 2023. And we've sort of been working on a bunch of different projects since then. We enjoyed working with each other. So I've written a few choral works with her, and the opera Alice Tierney. And so when this opportunity came along, I said, let's do a song. Let's do a few songs with soprano and organ. And it's wonderful also that the premiere of this is scheduled at a synagogue service, and Jackie is Jewish. And so I was like, she is going to have a lot of insight into where that's going to fit in the service
Yeah.
and the kinds of themes that will really resonate with that audience as well.
Yeah. Well, her text is absolutely stunning, and so the synagogue where this is taking place, this congregation Shearith Israel, where I'm director of music, and it's really been a joy to plug this in. We decided to break them up into three separate movements with a reading in between, or reading
Mhm.
slash prayer. There won't be a major break, but just a minute or two between each movement. So the 11-minute work will end up being closer to 14 or so, and so it'll be the center point of the whole service, which is gorgeous. Then tell me about some of your work with organ and how you find composing for the instruments.
Yeah.
It's one thing, as you know.
I have to say, so when I was in high school, I used to muck around on my high school organ. Although piano was my very first instrument, I have no real aptitude for keyboard instruments. I don't have sort of a natural talent for keyboard instruments. I think because primarily as a composer, I think of myself as a melodist. I think horizontally rather than vertically.
Mm.
Which, when you think of the development of Western music and you think of, Bach and all of these, Renaissance and Baroque composers, the development of Western harmony and vertical thinking certainly came out of counterpoint
Sure.
and horizontal melodic thinking. How
Yeah.
do melodies fit together? So it does me a world of good as a composer, I think, and especially as a choral composer, which is what I'm primarily known for. But I was intimidated by the idea of writing for organ, certainly early on in my career.
I can
Uh,
understand.
it's an intimidating instrument, and lay people, non-organists will look at an organist and go, oh my gosh, I don't know what all of those stops do. I don't know what any of these buttons do. And now you're thinking, and at least 3 lines of right hand, left hand, and a pedal. My gosh, so much to think about. But I was approached some years ago by Carson Kuhlman, organist based in Boston, who had heard some of my choral stuff and said, have you ever thought about writing for organ? And I said, well, not really. And he said, I would like you to try. I would like to commission an organ work for you because I've listened to your choral music, and I think that you might have some aptitude for writing for organ, thinking horizontally the way that I do. And also, he is very concerned, and this is something that fits into my mission as a composer, with writing a variety of music, which is not just extremely high level, can only be played by extreme prodigies of the craft of music. I think academic composition education tends to prepare composers to write very difficult works that can only be performed by people who have conservatory degrees. And he said,
Right.
especially in the world of organ, it is a practical working profession in the world of music, which I love about organists, generally speaking. And so he said, I want to commission things from you that could be performed by the music directors at a church who are looking for good new music to perform in that context.
Nice.
So the first work I wrote for him was a set of 2 preludes, and I really enjoyed that process. And the thing I think I enjoy the most about writing for organ is that it feels like a true collaboration with an unknown organist, meaning that when I write for organ as a non-organist, particularly, I give the organist a lot of trust to orchestrate essentially the notes that I am writing. I don't give them a ton of, very precise direction about exactly which stops I want. I'm giving you the structure of the notes and the piece and the way that it's laid out, the form of it, and saying to an organist, an unknown organist who's receiving the sheet music, what are you adding to this, given your knowledge of the instrument that you'll be using and your own expertise in orchestration? And that's really appealing to me, actually, that idea of every performance is going to sound a little bit different on a different instrument and according to the direction of a particular organist and what they think they could bring to the piece.
Sure.
Uh,
The
yeah,
organist is basically the job. Part of the job is to orchestrate.
yeah,
It was really only, I'm speaking in generalizations now, but really it was only French music that was pretty specific about use this sound,
right.
all the way up through into through the 20th century from the classic period. But Germany, Holland, England, they basically just gave pictures of sound and then dynamic levels, and then it's up to you to orchestrate, and in a way that makes it more fun for the organist, because then we get to choose what we think the composer's trying to say.
Yeah,
It's
it's
handset.
wonderful. It's
Yeah.
really wonderful, especially, when I grew up mostly actually as a string player. I played violin and viola is my main instrument, and I took up cello in college. And string players can often get so married to the idea of the composer's intent that they're afraid to, throw in a crescendo where it's not literally and explicitly placed on the page. And it's actually, I, as a composer, we don't know everything.
So,
Sometimes performers bring things to the table that we would never have thought of that might make the piece more interesting or better or more appropriate for a particular context.
yeah.
So it's great to work with a population of people who are more than comfortable doing that, who do that as a part of their practice.
Yeah, because every instrument is so different and acoustic is so different from room to room. One other question is, if do you have any suggestions for the person who's hearing this work for the first time? For many people, the first time is is a make or break, and that's kind of a scary thing for a composer because with a lot of pop music, we get to hear it 50 times and then decide
Mm.
whether we like it because it's all around us. But with classical composers, it's often you have one shot out the door and it either hits the mark or it doesn't. And so, how can you help us into the piece when we're for first time listeners?
As a former actor, I suppose, whenever I'm approaching something that has a text, or whenever I'm approaching vocal music, my in to how I'm writing the music is through the text. I always allow the text very much to guide me in the mood of the song and the melody and the shape of everything. So if I were just to give brief program notes about this piece, Jackie sent me these three wonderful prose poems. I love setting prose as well because it's so free and unstructured and gives me so many ideas about the shape of the line and how I'm going to shape that line. So the three texts, the first one, the morning song, is really a simple text about optimism and a new birth. And so, I hope the audience on the first time hearing it will be able to make that connection between the text and the way that I've chosen to illustrate that text with these more simple lines, these less complicated melodic and harmonic ideas. Then we have The Darkest Hour, which, as the title of it suggests, of course, is going to be a little darker, which, to me is about we've just come through a pandemic, and the situation in America is more complicated politically, I think, than ever. We are bombarded by information every day in all sorts of new avenues, and so it's about thinking about those tribulations and calling for that hope again in those moments when it can be really easy to despair and worry about where the present is taking us. And so that, of course, again, illustrated in the accompaniment in the organ lines, more complicated, more dramatic, more harmonic movement to really illustrate that as dramatically and theatrically as possible. And then the final one, the great work, is about how we move forward into the future. And I think of this as much more of, it's sort of a grander work, but it begins with this great line, hope braided in sacred hours. I love that line from Jackie. And immediately when I think of the word braid, I think of counterpoint, fugal type ideas, and the way that music, lines of melody, are braided together. So I took the opportunity to basically write that kind of counterpoint, which I love listening to on the organ as well. I feel like the organ is such a great instrument for that kind of counterpoint because you can really differentiate those lines. And the constant sound, unlike on a piano, for example, makes that counterpoint extremely clear.
Yeah.
So, I love counterpoint, I really do. So I took that opportunity to say, yes, now I can write something that's, essentially it starts as a 3-point invention and goes on from there. So yeah, I hope that the audience will interpret on a first listening the way that the music and the text combine, to paint those pictures very clearly for the audience. I write music. To me, music should be able to be understood even on a first listen. And you can sustain multiple listens and hear new things. But I write music, I hope, that on a first listen, the audience doesn't come away thinking like, I didn't understand any of that, but has an instant connection and understanding with what the piece is trying to say.
Yeah.
And perhaps they want to hear it again. Great. But they're not, they understand the message by the end of it. They understand how they should feel, what the music is asking of them as listeners.
Mm. That's great. And the piece takes us on a journey. I mean,
Yeah,
you start with morning praise of God and of the omnipotence, and then you move into recognition of all the things we've done wrong. So, pardon our iniquity is the line.
mm,
And then the third movement is like, okay, this is what we do in order to make the world a better place.
exactly.
So we chose this concept of making the world a better place as our theme for the whole service, so which in Judaism is called Tikkun Olam, and so that is actually the title for the whole service, Tikkun Olam, and the generation to generation concept, which is so beautifully written by Jackie here in this text, is I think really perfectly embodied by what you're doing. So thank you so much for
Oh, you're so
your amazing
welcome.
contribution. I can't wait to hear the performance, especially since it's on the organ that I play all the time.
Oh my gosh, so familiar territory for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this and David Higgs was a fantastic performer, so he'll really do a beautiful job with this. It's going to be a win-win. I think it's going to be a great start to the convention.
I am a very lucky composer to
Uh,
get these kinds of opportunities. Honestly, I feel so fortunate all the time. I pinch myself on a daily basis. I hope I never lose just this sense of how fortunate I am to be able to write music like this, to have people who are eager to hear this music, to help me create this music, and to be connected to these amazing performers who bring it all to life. Because, I tell my students, my composition students every day, we could be scribbling in the dark for all our lives, but when a performer chooses to bring that work to life, that is something that is really special, and we should never lose our sense of gratitude for that. So thank you so much.
Okay, well, listen, thank you for this time, and I look forward to seeing you in person,
Yeah,
and especially to hearing the music. So, thanks for this work that that you've done, and be safe.
my pleasure. Thank you.
All right, take good care now. Bye
Okay,
bye.
bye.